Good morning and welcome to Coffee Time with Kauffman, the comfortable place to talk about women's leadership. Today, we are talking about building sovereignty into women's leadership. But before I get into that, my name is Maria Kauffman and I'm a life coach. Today, I'm drinking some flavored coffee. Woohoo. It's been a while since I've done some flavored coffee. And today is butter toffee, one of my all-time favorites. So it's a happy Friday, a happy morning. Kudos to everyone as well for getting to hopefully what is the end of their week. So back to building sovereignty into women's leadership. So what does that mean, right? I'll start with the definition of sovereignty. It's kind of a big and clunky word, right? So I shy away from using sovereignty, but the fact of the matter is that the word sovereignty is so important when talking about women's leadership. So today, I wanted to give the word and the meaning behind the word a little bit of space and time to discuss it, talk about it, what it means to women's leadership and beyond. So sovereignty, by definition, it's a noun, and the definition is supreme power or authority. So when it comes to women's leadership, I believe as a human being that it is my duty to be the sovereign leader of myself. I am the supreme power and authority over me, over who I am, how I live my life, where I go, what I do, what I say, how I say it. And somewhere in there, it gets to be trickier and more turbulent than you would expect at times. So that is, I'm a little bit behind them. I try and put these titles in to prompt myself and help myself. And then I get into the topic and forget them. So that is sovereignty defined, the supreme power and authority as it applies to women's leadership. That means for a woman, the supreme power to be yourself as a woman. I like to touch on as well, what does that have to do with unstoppable goals? For anyone who knows me, I love to talk about goals. I advocate strongly to have at least one unstoppable goal well defined for yourself. So imagine you're living your life and you don't have any, what I will call unstoppable goals. So this is, to me, one of those litmus tests and early indicators that makes you inquire a little deeper into your own authority. Now, when I say you don't have a goal, let me just be clear in that I think having a goal is actually very natural. I think your heart is on a mission in your life, whether you know it or not. The exercise in creating an unstoppable goal that's a little more tangible, right? So maybe, you have a dream. I talk about how to turn a dream into a goal, and doing that exercise and making a dream, which is very intangible, into something that is tangible is an exercise, right? And I say that it's an exercise in empowerment. So in creating a life for yourself, and I believe also creating success and happiness in life, It all starts with that unstoppable goal. Going through an exercise to make it tangible is an act of empowerment. Looking back on my life, I know that there were kind of times where I was, I'll say, more successful and more happy. In those times, I was driving toward a goal. Whether I had it written down, whether I told anybody about it or not, I knew inside myself, inside um, myself, that I was headed somewhere. And that feels good. It kind of feels good to wake up every day and to know that you're on a mission. Also, looking back on the times where it seemed like I wasn't achieving the success that I knew that I had the potential for. And maybe those times in my life where I was less happy, or actually, to be honest, downright miserable, right? In those miserable times, I look back and I think, I wonder if I consciously or if I was aware of what maybe my heart wanted or the direction that I really wanted to take my life. So when I talk about it in this way, it brings up to some level, although it's a big and clunky word, sovereignty. I'll say this is that sovereignty came across my awareness or my consciousness when I was taking a course, and I'll say taking a course, I purchased a DVD set or CD set. And I think it was called Women's Leadership by Joan Borisenko. That I remember, it was definitely by Joan Borisenko. We'll talk about her in a little bit deeper. Uh, and it was a CD set. So as I'm driving in my career, I have put on a lot of miles on the car. Typically, I'm driving anywhere from a half hour to an hour drive from my home location to whatever location I'm working at the time. That has been the bulk of my career, a lot of time on the road. When you spend a lot of time on the road, it does encourage you to find ways to use that time wisely. So for me, it meant, audiobooks. Back in the day, it's either I was finding classes that were on CDs, or even way back in the day, I literally had cassette tapes that I would play in my car in my early days to get that knowledge and that learning and make that time useful for me. So I'm listening to Joan Borisenko's, I think it was titled Women's Leadership. It definitely had something to do with women's empowerment or women's leadership. I am a huge fan and a heavy study in the topic. And as I got through the CD set, there was probably, I'm going to say, at least 8 to 12 CDs. So by the time I was getting through it, and Joan was telling these rich and beautiful stories of sovereignty, and she may have used that word specifically to me, which brought it to light. She basically was talking about the story of Shrek. I thought it was interesting how a woman, by day might appear one way, and by night, she is the complete opposite of that outward expression of the way people see her. I thought it was very, very interesting the way she talked about that story. And I'm not even sure if she highlighted the fact that it's basically the movie of Shrek or if I put those two together. So the point is that I highly advocate to have unstoppable goals. And I also encourage the idea of maybe how that makes you sovereign, a kind of a gut check at the end of the creation of an unstoppable goal to say, what does that do for my own sovereignty? So for a while, as I went into this deep process of further understanding women's leadership, women's empowerment, Sovereignty for sure. The idea came to me that there must be a simple way to basically work towards sovereignty. And the image of a 5-point star came to my mind. And if you imagine a 5-point star, I kind of like to draw a 5-point star. It's almost like a check mark at the end of the day. Oh, I did this thing. It's back in the day of, maybe grade school, whenever your grade school teacher would put little stars on your paper. They kind of make you feel good, don't they? Hopefully they make you feel good. So the idea of sovereignty and boiling it down to a very, very simplified system was something I was working toward. The idea of the 5-point star came to mind. So if you imagine that a 5-point star at the top is sovereignty. And it's kind of as if you were to spin a circle, sovereignty would be the direction in which you are going. So as we kind of look at a star and we come down the first 2 points out the sides, or I'll say are the larger wings of the 5-point star. And I like to consider these 2 wings to be polar opposites. And I like to think about them as we sometimes live in a world with something, and sometimes, even though we're in the same world, there is an element of living in that world without. For example, certainly in the dynamics of being a woman engineer, there are certain biases that you're going to come across. As human beings all have biases. Whether we like to think about it or not, we love to believe that we're not biased. And that's probably partly true, because on some level in life, we live in a world without. Sometimes we are actually exhibiting or being influenced by those biases. So that's the world with. Nothing is 100%. There is no such thing as perfection, right? So if there's no such thing as perfection, there's no such thing as 100%. So as we live our lives, there are times, once again, where, let's say, in the world of biases, you're going to come across some people who don't believe that it is possible for you to be a woman engineer. So you're going to come across that from an external perspective, and either you are going to believe it or not. So, and actually that kind of gets me down into, let me hold off on talking about the external and internal a little bit. But to give the world with and the world without a little flavor is just helping you understand that sometimes you are under those influences and sometimes you are not. So what that means is I may believe somebody who tells me that I can't do something, or I can take what they say as something that is limiting, or I'll say limiting, or trying to be a decelerator in the advancement of my own sovereignty. So that's where the words get to be a little big and clunky. So when someone else tries to impact your ability to be a sovereign person, you have a choice. You can either believe that, which further limits your own sovereignty, or you can take that as an opportunity to show the world what you're really capable of. And because that is the essence of the conversation that I open this space up to have, that's why I've been so anxious to bring color and to bring this conversation to the table. So when you're in the world without, you may have a situation where you have somebody that tries to tell you that you can't do something in the world. You believe that you can do that thing in the world. The world without is when you actually forget about all of those dynamics that could be confrontational. They could come in many different flavors and colors of how you react to the person and how you digest the interaction. But then when you go out into the world believing that you can do what you want to do, and it is your mission to show the world that your version of being an engineer or being a scientist or being a financial advisor, whatever that may be, that you are going to show them how to do it, and you go to work. So the beauty is that when you take those steps and those actions to get into work and to be the person that you want to be, if you want to be an engineer, so be it. You walk out into the world and there's a world without. So there's a little bit of a blend, right? So you're also, as for most people still these days, you are somewhat subject to those biases on a couple different levels. So nothing's 100%. Highly encourage to get to a place where you're experiencing life and living life without the biases, basically. Pretty normal to have them. At the bottom of the 5-point star, what I like to talk about is there's external and internal, and there's motivators and rewards. So as I was talking about those interactions, at least on the level of biases in the world, there's going to be external and internal. Part of that is, you may be the one who is biased and you are portraying or you're behaving in a way that pushes those bias onto other people. That would be more external, right? Even if somebody is trying to tell me, hey, isn't engineering a man's world, right? That's someone else externally to me trying to influence and bias my life and my world as a sovereign being in a direction. Internally, I get to choose how to interpret the influence, right? So what I do with women in my coaching practice is I help them build immunity to imposter syndrome. So this is a big place and a big foundation of how it works. So we analyze and we'll talk about these external influences that happen. A very, very important step to take along that way is to figure out those internal reactions or the internal motivators then that interprets a situation in whatever way you may interpret them. There's no good, bad, or there's nothing neutral, certainly. You can interpret it in positive ways and potentially in negative ways. That brings us back once again to the unstoppable goal and how important that is. So imagine if you don't have an unstoppable goal and somebody tries to tell you that you can't do something, you just might believe them. And you might just say, oh, okay, I'm not meant to be an engineer. I'm just going to go a whole different direction, right? So I also challenge once again is the heart kind of knows. And even if you don't have that defined or outwardly expressed, I believe that if you want something in life, your heart's going to figure out a way to get it. Some way or another, you are going to take those steps to be the engineer or follow a path in life that is truly meant for you. Motivators and rewards. So we're motivated in life based on some internal and external factors. An external factor that motivates us is money, right? Putting food on the table, food and shelter, some of these very, very basic. If you know the hierarchy of Maslow, this is a basic human needs for love and belonging, shelter, keeping basically our human being alive. Internal motivators are happiness, right? So I love to talk about happiness and success together because it forces us to blend the conversation about those motivators. And it's not necessarily about money. Sometimes money's kind of a, a necessary attribute that comes along for the ride just because we do have to live as humans. And then the rewards also. So the rewards, motivators kind of lead to rewards, right? If you're motivated by money, it's going to lead to money. Reward is the money. You're motivated by money, you get money as a reward. I love to take it a step further and talk about the results of the results, right? And my favorite way to explain this idea is to talk about my hairdresser. So you would think that I go to my hairdresser for one very clear reason, is to get my hair cut or colored or whatever I do with the hairdresser, right? Whatever service I pay for, right? And this is true. I certainly go to my hairdresser to get my hair cut and colored. And that is what she delivers on. There's an exchange. I give her money for her time to do this service. But there is a reward from the reward. There's a result from the result. So I go to get my hair cut and colored, but I walk away not only with an outward expression that is an extension of who I want to be in the world. So she helps me express myself. That is so magical, right? I get help with that. And she actually a lot of times is better than me. I'll go in and I won't even know what's best for me, or maybe I'll have an idea of something and I might, talk about that in a few words. And she can take what I say to her as how I want to feel and turn it into a haircut. That's kind of crazy, crazy cool. So the results of the results. Partly why I go to my hairdresser, and I'm sure many, many people on the planet have similar experiences, is that she's kind of like a shaman. Her and I can have a conversation and I get to talk about my life. I get to talk about what's going on in the world, and she listens. Oh, great hairdresser will really listen and be in that world with you and allow you to be yourself from the inside, from an internal perspective, as they are transforming a piece of your external world. And then on top of that, once again, my hairdresser, what I love about her so much is that she allows me to continue every day, 24/7. I get to walk around with this hairstyle because she has given me that gift, right? So it's the rewards of the rewards, or the results of the results. So I want to touch base once more, working through the 5 points of sovereignty. So as we do draw a 5-point star, the tippy top is sovereignty. Sovereignty, I believe, is a phenomenal and very, very important goal for building into a woman's leadership. When a woman in leadership, even in life, from a personal leadership perspective, the more sovereign you are, the more impact and the more positivity you are going to express and spread in the world. Especially as we work down, once again, Understanding that there's a world with and a world without. Nothing's 100%. Nothing is perfect. The idea would be to spend more time in the world without. Imagine spending more time in life without limitations, without biases, without all of the negativity. That's what a world without is. That would get your star spinning in a direction that leads to more sovereignty. Understanding external and internal motivators also, even at the bottom of that star, the two legs that it stands on, is helping to understand what your motivators are in life that lead to sovereignty and what are the rewards, the results of the results. I like to think of motivators as what goes into who you are, and the rewards are what comes out. When it's really well balanced, I'll say well balanced and like a well oiled machine, it allows you to get into a sustainable energy system. Imagine if you wake up energized and then you go out into the world motivated to do what you are meant to do in life and to be that sovereign person. And then at the end of the day, spending all that time without in the world without allows you to go to sleep feeling accomplished and rewarded. You get to receive the results of the results at the end of your day. So you sleep well, you are well, you allow then your body to do a natural rejuvenation process even while you sleep. So then the next day, you can wake up and continue that motivation and go out into the world and do even more. One of the tricky parts there is just understanding those external and internal motivators that will get you into that sustainable process, and understanding too that we live in a world with and a world without. That's a tricky place to be. Not a lot of people kind of understand that, and that certainly is something that I help my clients with. So yeah, and that's where a lot of burnout, right, and stress and anxiety, those things tend to fall off the plate when you get your star spinning in the right direction and understand some of those dynamics. So in closing today, I'll share this quote from Joan Borisenko. She says, "Rather than thinking in terms of good and bad, it is more helpful to think in terms of conscious and unconscious, aware and unaware." I believe that too will lead you toward building sovereignty into women's leadership. Thank you for being a part of the conversation for inspiring women's leadership. Coffee Time with Kauffman is the comfortable place to discuss women's leadership, because I am on a mission to help the world discover the truth about what women are capable of. When you are ready for your leadership mastery makeover, go to mariakaufman.com and click on Consult a Coach, where you can schedule time with me for an empowerment session. Have a great week. Enjoy your adventures and journey responsibly.